Thanks, Coach. I appreciate it. All right, so thank you for the introduction, Coach. I'm glad to be here. I was signed up last year. We all know that COVID has kind of flipped all of our worlds on its head. And I'm very gracious to be even affiliated and be a part of the university that I was able to play for. Getting to play under, most people in here would know Hank Bijou, and then under Coach Stanton. It was an honor to do that, and it's a really cool thing that I'm able to come back and give back to the football team, the whole university as a whole, as I've been trying to get back into there. So thank you guys for sitting through this. I'll make it as painless as possible. Got a bachelor's, got a master's. I'm a certified strength and conditioning coach, all that stuff. So the biggest thing that we've seen is this is weight room specific. How and where do we get success with the tool of the weight room to make it success on the field, okay? I'll go over that multiple times. The weight room is not the main priority. I need to use it in my best ability to make the field successful, okay? So how and where do we get that? And it's a twofold process, and I'll go over that here in a second. So my story, very briefly, again, from Worland, Wyoming, small town Wyoming, middle class, you would say, underprivileged to some extent. Parents said, you better get a lot better at football because you're not getting your school paid for. So ended up being very lucky, going to Dickinson State, having my school paid for. And after that, I graduated and decided to start my own strength and conditioning company in the private sector. And so that kind of grew and molded into what is now the Iron Chapel. We're a strength and conditioning facility for athletes. But as we progress from there, we get into how and why do we achieve success in the weight room, outside of the weight room, and everywhere in between, classroom and just humans, okay? So I break this down very easily for you guys today. The technical, the programming, the implementation, the day-by-day, me cueing, 5 a.m. in the morning, telling people what to do. That's the day-by-day, that's the technical. That stuff does have to be perfect, okay? It does have to be. It's a science. It has to be there. We have to have good programming. But the second part, the culture, building that is what makes the success. You look at professional athletes, and all these professional strength coaches are taking credit for how great of athletes they are. You could put them in the weight room playing the French horn, and they're going to get better at their sport. It's genetics, okay? So I can't take all of that because my programming, this, that, and the other. The culture is what helps build it and bring it there. So we'll go over that twofold process. So technically, weight room success for the field, okay? It's not, the weight room is not important. I understand my job is not as important as the head football coach, okay? I get that. But how can we make it a piece to have a successful program? So we have to start small. You have to look at the demands of the sport for your athletes, okay? So we have to be able to do the fundamentals right. We have to be able to, is that cutting out a little bit? Let's see if this helps. Better? Okay. So we have to be able to do the fundamentals right. If any of you guys have been around a college football atmosphere or even just Coach Stanton himself, it's always do the small things right, no matter what it is. That's being a person and on the field. Do the small things, the fundamentals right, and we'll be fine. And we've all heard it in high school and college. Don't think, go. We should react to the stimulus, okay? We don't want to get caught thinking about our process as we go. So if I ask this question, and I won't go on until I get an answer, just to let you know, what are the demands of football? What are the demands of that sport, specifically physically for an athlete? I'm telling you, I'll stay here. What are the demands for a football player to be successful? Thank you. Awesome. Awesome. Getting technical. I like it. So if we're looking very broadly at the 10,000 foot view, to be successful, we need to be more powerful, stronger, and for most athletes, we could put some weight on them, hypertrophy phases, okay? So as we progress, we need to look at the demands of the sport and reverse engineer from there, okay? Not take somebody's program because it looks great or bigger, faster, stronger because everybody else is doing it. Look at your athletes, look at the demands, look at your facility, implement what you need, okay? So it makes it very simple once you actually just reverse engineer what you need. So very basically, there's a pretty big difference between these two. I mean, somebody's perspective, Uncle Rico's a stud. But what sets these two apart, okay? In all seriousness, what sets these two people apart? The ability to seamlessly be an athlete, okay? We've all seen athletes that you know that as soon as the ball is hiked, they're thinking, they're stuttering, they can't do anything, okay? Great athletes, physical part aside, do their task seamlessly and effortlessly. There's no thinking attached to it, okay? So that's the second part of our talk today, but physically, we need to be, everybody can agree, we need to be more powerful. We need to have flexibility, enough active range of motion to get the task done, and we need to be bigger, faster, stronger athletes, okay? So, we're still under the technical phase here a little bit. So what is athleticism? Okay, if we're going to engineer a program from the top down, we need to know what our end goal is. How do we get better at athleticism? It's a hard question to answer, okay? So my definition of athleticism is the ability to seamlessly and effortlessly combine primal movement patterns through space to accomplish a known or novel task, okay? So let's break that down a little bit. The ability to seamlessly and effortlessly, okay? Again, we talk about that mental side of things. How can we establish the athlete to be a better mental athlete, okay? So we need them to do the task without thinking. Combined primal movement patterns through space. So we'll go over kind of what our primal movement patterns are, but every single play, every single down, every single second, the athletes are going through the same primal movement patterns. There's nothing new, okay? This game's been played for hundreds of years. There's nothing new out of the sport. So we need to be able to combine those effortlessly and seamlessly, and then through space to perform a known or novel task, okay? We used to have the squeeze shoot, your stand-up linebacker, ear hole in the center. I know I'm going from here to there, A to B, okay? But what happens when you get ear holed? It's the novel task, okay? We need to be able to accomplish that known or novel task as we go. So our primal movements: squat, step, lunge, vertical push, vertical pull, horizontal push, horizontal pull. Very simple, okay? Keep the fundamentals very simple, and you fit in your accessories as you go, okay? So we have to provide the stimulus needed for them to be successful. Very, very, very generally, we have to provide that stimulus so it's not something new to them. So as we go, if we can engineer, and I'll talk about this later too, if we can engineer the stimulus, the environment, to mimic or make it a superior experience, we're going to win. We're going to have championships. We're going to be successful. We can't baby these guys into something and then they get blindsided as they come in the sport, okay? So we need to be able to mimic that stimulus, and I come back to that a lot. Reverse engineer, mimic the stimulus. So we all agree we're strength and speed, and every single play, the athlete goes through that, okay? So very basically, we'll go through the muscle actions too, but we have our three types of muscle actions: eccentric, isometric, and concentric muscle actions, okay? In every single second of sport, we're going through all three of those, okay? So the athlete that can do it better can be faster at accelerating their weight, decelerating their weight, and re-accelerating it faster than their opponent's going to win every single time. If we're looking at it on a molecular level, 1v1, you're going to win every time, okay? So in our program, we hold our muscle contraction training, which would be, if there's any strength guys in here, Cal Dietz out of Minnesota, triphasic training, some of the best training you can get. The guy's a genius, much smarter than myself. And so we actually train in those muscle actions, okay? So very basically, I'm running, I plant to stop. My muscle is now getting longer as I go down. There's a point where it stops. There's no tension going either way. The muscle stays the same. There's force from the ground. There's force from me. That's isometric. Then we re-accelerate out of the hole. Now we're concentric, okay? So the reason why we hold that so true is if we're going through it on every single point of our game, why can't we mimic that in the weight room to some extent, okay? This isn't sports specificity BS. This is science. This is getting back to the roots of your sport. Then we need to be able to move through multiple planes of space, okay? All three of them, sagittal, frontal, and transverse. And that is the very basics, and we'll get into kind of what else we're doing here. But if you look at this picture here, he's going through every single type of muscle action. He's moving through almost every single plane of motion, and it's one play. So we need to mimic this as strength and conditioning coaches. We can't just do bigger, faster, stronger, okay? Jim Windler's 5-3-1 is great, but it's not the end-all be-all, okay? So this is one of the aspects that I feel is possibly the most overlooked in high school and collegiate weight rooms. We hold a huge, huge emphasis on this part of the curve, okay? How much can the kid bench? How much can the kid squat? For some reason, the golden era of bodybuilding has completely skewed our minds to think that that's the most important thing, okay? Nowadays, we know that in every single sport, every single play, we go through all of these. Maximal strength, strength, speed, peak power, speed, strength, and maximum velocity, okay? So, for an example of that, think about the dying play of football, kickoff. In kickoff, we are at a very, very high velocity, okay? That is the fastest action between two forces on a football field. So, we need to be able to mimic that in training. This is our max velocity. Then we get up all the way to here, our OD linemen in the trenches, okay? That's where it's slow but powerful to some extent in comparison to, okay? So we need to be able to mimic this in our weight room as we reverse engineer. So this can get us down to very, very, very basically, now it can change for position. Now it can, like anything, any players, wide receivers, to OD linemen, now we can mimic their experience in the weight room. And too much of anything is bad, ladies and gents. We continually work with 30% of your highest rep max. You're not going to have a successful football team. Everybody's going to be tiny, and it's not going to be very good. But then we're up here and we stay at the maximum strength. We're going to have very strong athletes, but very slow athletes, okay? And with the evolution of football, that's not where we need to be. So just remember, too much of anything is bad. Here we have some examples a little bit. So this is just a block of training we had in the winter conditioning phase, one from last year, one from this year. Two different athletes, two different aspects of the training, okay? So on this side we have our high velocity, hopefully the volume, there we go. So he's at like 255. We got 75-pound trap bars. So he's at 255 with that, moving the weight quick, reloading at the bottom, not going as fast as you can. We're all about intense bouts of movement, okay? Because every movement on the football field is very intense. As fast as we can, we rest. As fast as we can, we rest. So we need to mimic that in the weight room. So that's about 255. And then we got Corbin Wood here doing a max effort deadlift. And a psychopath in black jumping around everywhere. So this shows you the spectrum that we can go through, that we need to see in the weight room, okay? We have some more examples here. Now we're getting into a little bit more squat variations, and then one very overlooked aspect of training, med ball work, okay? And after this, guys, don't worry, I know I'm overloading. After these, I should give you an implementation page, like what can you do right now, okay? This is all fine and dandy, but what can I do when I go home, okay? And I'll give you that to you. So, high velocity on our back squats, we have Colin, he's at 185, okay? Nothing to bat an eye at, but he's moving it quick, okay? That's what we want. He's down, up fast. Going up as fast as he can with 185, okay? Then we get into the med ball work like I talked about. This allows us to move through all planes of motion very fast, producing the same exact force that we are on the football field. So this is something that I believe is very, very overlooked, and it's something that can change the culture and change the athlete, okay?
Ready, go. Good reaction.
So off of this, there's a few things to break down. We're working in the frontal plane of motion. He's pushing, going to the side, okay? But it also, you break it down even further, he's going off of my cue, okay? He's going off set hut. We're training that all the time. If you can implement that into your training, it will make a difference, okay? So he's working at very high velocities. We have a very light med ball, and he's going as fast as he can, okay? Then we have our stud Blake Murray. I think this was 560, 570, I think, on the back squat. Obviously, that's not going to be very fast, okay? So, another psychopath in black jumping around like crazy. We have a principle, we have a few principles in the weight room, and one of them is the use of compensatory acceleration, okay? If you've known anything about the strength game, Louis Simmons, the best to ever do it, but he talks about compensatory acceleration, and what does that mean, okay? So we break it down very simply. We need to move the bar, we need to move 500 pounds like it's the bar, and the bar like it's 500 pounds. No matter what you're doing, everything is fast. Because if you're going slow on the football field, you're going to get decleated, okay? Everything has to be fast. So we need to make sure every rep is the same. We need to move it with max force or max velocity. There's no gray area there. That's something that we've built into the program. So anything that is concentric, where the muscle's getting shorter, we're going fast, okay? That's a very small detail that can change a program. Then we get into the technical phase of triphasic. We talked about the muscle actions, the different types of muscle actions, how we can implement that in the weight room. Implementing that in the weight room is not too terribly hard. You just get a bunch of pissed off athletes that don't want to do it, okay? So we've instilled a sense of responsibility. We have them in their groups. They're calling each other out with the tempos. We use a program called Team Builder and Train Heroic. If you're in the strength world, you know those two. But we use Team Builder. We can put in our tempos and everything, okay? So with this, now I can program, and I'll show you the phases and the blocks that we use, but I can program specifically an eccentric phase for 2 full weeks. On all your primal movements, we're going eccentric, meaning if we're in a squat, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, snapping out of the hole. And I'll go over kind of the benefits and why we do that here soon. But very basically, on the eccentric side here, we can control the tempo, going nice and easy.
1, go at speed. Come on, Logan. Go.
So there again, they're going off of a cue. We can make sure that they're controlling the tempo. We're getting more time under tension, getting more muscle damage, and in turn making a better athlete to some extent, okay? Then we have isometrics. Remember that these are 125-pound dumbbells in each hand here. The kid's a beast. So now we're at about a 3 to 4 second pause in the hole.
Tense for a ride, let's go.
Making sure we have more muscle damage, and I'll go over kind of the positives of that as well. And lastly, our concentric. This video, I'm going to pause like within 5 seconds. He did 29 reps of 315. He's a freaking animal. So I'll pause it halfway, but he's just up and down, snappy, everything. This right here is what you would see in a weight room that doesn't have an implemented program. It's just squat 315, okay? Instead of, we have an end goal. We have something that we want to get to, right? It matters how we get there. It's not just getting from point A to point B. It's the implementation, the execution, the setup of what we're doing, okay? So we need to make sure that how we get to point A to point B is what we're focusing on, because every athlete can do this, okay? We need to make sure that it's pretty getting there, and that and that relates to the squat itself. We need to get from standing to sitting to standing as best as we can, or that's our macro goals, winning a conference championship. How do we get from point A to point B is very important. So eccentrically, everybody, we're here, we're loading tissues, we're loading tendons. I'll get to kind of my story, but I had crazy bad run-ins with injuries, okay? Here, we can now load the tissue, load the tendon, allowing them to build a little bit of stability, but now we can increase their rate of force development. Rate of force development is king in the strength and conditioning world. It's king. It comes back to compensatory acceleration. Rate of force development is producing the maximal amount of force in the minimal amount of time. Whatever athlete does that best and quicker wins. One-on-one, every time, okay? So that's what we're trying to accomplish with our eccentrics. When we get into our isometrics, guys, we're trying to build stability. We're trying to build the integrity of the joint, okay? Very basically. There's a lot to it, but the research isn't completely black or white on time frames. How long should you do an eccentric? How long should you do an isometric? It's not there yet, but here we're trying to build the stability of the joint, allowing them to be more stable in high force environments, okay? If we can be more stable in a high force environment, again, they win, okay? So that's kind of the breakdowns of that, allows with better change of direction. And like I was saying prior, all this plays into acceleration, deceleration, re-acceleration, okay? That's the name of the game that we're looking to accomplish with these.
3, 2.
So, implementation, all this jargon and all this banter that I just gave you for 20 minutes, how can we implement it now? Small bits and pieces that we can implement now in our high school or our collegiate weight room. So, we need to first reverse engineer, okay? What is the athlete exposed to? What dictates success? What is success, okay? How is an athlete successful? How is an athlete a better athlete, okay? And then what are their weaknesses? This here, answer and ask these 3 questions and program it, okay? So then they are exposed to very, very high velocities, abnormal joint ankles. That brings us back to mobility of the hip and the ankle, possibly the 2 most important. And then they're exposed to power, strength, and hypertrophy. We need to train that manner, and then we obviously need an anaerobic demand or an anaerobic base for them to be successful. And then we implement it. And I'll show you on our Team Builder app here how we implement that. So we need to put all of our primal movements, they need to be hit for strength, power, hypertrophy, okay? And then they need to be hit through eccentric, isometric, concentric. So it's a very basic system, but we can look from week 1 to week 12 of winter conditioning. We hit back squat for strength 5 times, we hit it for power 5 times, and we hit it for hypertrophy 5 times. It makes a very simple and easy system that you can implement on the go. Let's see if I can get here or not. If not, it won't be too worried about it. Boom. There we go. So this is in January. This is at the start of our winter conditioning. Okay, we have this app, this nice little pretty app that all these kids can use. So very basically, guys, very, very basically, we have our blocks of eccentric work. So we're working on just controlling, going down nice and slow and exploding up. We have that usually anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. We like to keep to 2, especially with the COVID year. It's been a weird winter conditioning year. So we're going to focus on that for 2 full weeks, okay? And then, as you can see here, whatever I did on Friday, hang cleans, is going to be on Monday. It just moves up the list, okay? Reason being, now we can look, we can see what is the weakness of this team. We are slow as crap, okay? Then maybe we should have a little bit more speed work here than strength work, okay? So this makes it very basic and very easy for you to implement and just go. So here, we move it back up. These were for 5s, okay? That's about as much as we'll ever do with a hang or power variation. Any Olympic lift, we now move it to here, and now we're at ones. We're finding our best one RM there, okay? So that makes it very simple, because now I have 2 weeks of eccentrics, I have back squat with eccentric, I have trap bar deadlift, and then we flip it and make sure we're going through all planes of motion, okay? That's kind of how we break it down, and that's worked really, really well for what we're doing. Any questions thus far on that?
Talk about as you progress your volumes, do you mess a lot with, are you working down in volume, up in volume? Are we jumping around in total volume?
It's context dependent, yes. This year, very different, very weird time. So we also implement the Athletic Republic treadmills. I don't know if those, it's kind of an old thing that's outlived its time. So we get a lot of high speed velocity, high speed eccentric work on that. So that takes care of a lot of our volume. So we will go in ascending, descending order, depending on the context, okay?
Talk about like in-season training, what would you...
Yep, we're gonna jack up the intensity and cut the volume, almost always, 100% of the time. And it's funny, it's almost people think it's counterintuitive. We need to be in maintenance, okay? We need to maintain. I'm sorry to break it to everybody, there's no such thing as maintaining, okay? If I sit on the couch with a bag of potato chips, I'm not maintaining, okay? Our body is always going to eat itself or build itself, okay? So we need to make sure that we can get strength gains in the in-season. And that's something, I have a speech on it about being a good coach when it matters, being a good coach in the majority of your time. Because winter conditioning is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks long if you're lucky. In season, pre-season is the majority of your calendar year. So making sure we can cut some volume and jack up the intensity. When I say volume intensity, volume being reps, intensity being our load usually, okay? Good, awesome. So just for the sake of time, I have some results on kind of our winter conditioning this year. Best winter conditioning that I've had as a coach, and I don't think that's due to me. I think it's due to the buy-in from the kids. It's been the best year we've had in a long time. When I played there, and you think about it, there's always this trickle-down effect, right? You look at D1, you look at Bama, LSU, all these big schools, even NDSU with Jim Kramer. He is the coach for football, okay? And that's it. You got GAs, you got help with everything else. Well, in NAI, it's a little bit different, okay? You're the coach for 7 different sports. So we did have a great year to, where was I going with that? Losing it. So we did have a great year, technical-wise, results-wise, but the reason why is not just the day-to-day, the implementation, the jargon, all the stuff that I do. Hey, don't let your ankle collapse, dig your big toe. Not all that stuff. All that stuff is not why we had success. One reason, and this is just in the weight room obviously, is our coaching staff as a whole, okay? I've been plugged into a very, very experienced, awesome coaching staff outside of the weight room, okay? That's a good big reason. They've brought up great kids, okay? So now we kind of get into the culture part, and probably the most important. So now we're done with the day-to-day implementation, cueing, programming. Now we get into starting with your why and the culture, building the culture of it. And same concept as what I just did. I'm going to give you an implementation page at the end so you guys can take bits and pieces and apply it now. So it sounds cliche. You've heard it all the time. Start with your why, okay? I hold this a little bit closer to heart than most. Going through the story, I mean, I had my first shoulder surgery was a sophomore year in high school, just due to burning the candle at both ends. And then we get into college, and every single year, I started all 4 years, started from true freshman till I was done. Every single year, I came back from a surgery, okay? So all first 3 years, shoulder surgery. Last one, blew my knee out actually in Miles City here. And I snapped my patellar tendon, okay? When we look at lower body injuries, Achilles and patellar tendon, I would be hard-pressed to find a worse lower body injury at this point, okay? LCL is pretty bad. But having said that, starting with my why, I never want any kid to go through what I had to go through, okay? It's not the little mission statement, I want to have an impact. It's not how it is, okay? I do not want any kid to go through what I went through, because it's not just the injuries that plagued me, okay? Pain medication is readily available very quickly when you're a college athlete. Something that's not talked about very often, okay? That's very easy and it's a very slippery slope. Having injuries can lead to that. That's where I step in. That's what I don't want any athlete to go to. So being able to present underprivileged kids or anybody the ability to further their life through strength and conditioning, okay? If I can get a kid in high school, bulk him up, he's already an athlete, he's from small town New England, North Dakota, I can get him a scholarship. Now his parents don't have to pay for it, okay? Their parents had a rough year on the farm. I can now help them as a family, not just put weight on them. It's much more than just the strength and conditioning aspect. So that's where I start with my why. It's not, I want to have an impact, okay? And we must explain everything, the why behind everything, okay? And this goes from why are we here at 5 a.m. to why am I having you execute this squat the way I am? We need to look at our macro and our micro goals and apply them the why, okay? And to some extent, and I get this too, we also need to just say, do this and go. Take away decision making, do this and go, okay? So there's that fine line, and that's the art of coaching, okay? That's what we do. So, great book called Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. Very briefly, I'll make this brief too, but there's 3 ways to get culture change. You could interchange this name with anything. Culture change, behavior change, attitude change, whatever, okay? So first and foremost, we need to be able to direct the rider. So in the book, he talks about the rider being the rational mind, in between the ears, thinking that you control everything, that you do everything, okay? We need to be able to give clear direction and reduce mental paralysis. That gets us back to, do this because I said so, but here's why, okay? No questions asked, just go and do it. We're going tackling circuit, it's time to go, okay? Then, motivating the elephant, okay? The elephant is our emotional side, the emotional side of the athlete. Find the emotional connection with your athletes. And I hope, I have a few more slides here, I hope that you can take one thing away, it's connecting to that emotional side of the athlete, okay? As a strength and conditioning coach, you're supposed to be bald, big beard, and just an asshole. Not all the time, okay? That's just not how it goes all the time. There's times for it, but we have to make sure that we can motivate the elephant and get that emotional connection. Then we need to shape the path, okay? We need to shape the path for the athletes. We need to reduce obstacles, tweak the environment to be advantageous and not advantageous at some times, okay? And then we need to make the journey go as downhill as possible, as downhill as we can, okay? So, directing the rider. Clear and concise goals for the athlete. And this is where we get into micro and macro, okay? So, I can look at a per session basis or a per workout or a whole season. There's this big spectrum here, okay? So now, I need to be able to break down those micro goals and bring them back to why they're important. So, there's goals for the training session, there's goals for the block of training, there's goals for winter conditioning, and there's goals for the season. And giving them that why. When I set up for a squat, I tell you to smash your big toe, drop down, all the cues that anybody else would. Well, coach, why are you telling me to dig my big toe? We should be able to implement the why from every molecular 1,000-foot view to why is this going to win us a conference championship. Okay? So it's not just fluff and jargon. You're giving them what they need. Okay? It's not do it because that's how I grew up doing it. Continuing to evolve and give them the entire spectrum of your why. So you can relate your micro, this is a better way to put it, relate your micro to your macro goals. The day-to-day to the end of season. Relate those back to each other. Okay? Then we need to be able to reduce mental paralysis. Again, I said this, and we've seen this in high schools and colleges even. Those kids that sometimes they just don't get it, okay? They just don't know where they're going. they're going to go 100 miles an hour, but they have no idea what's going on the field. We need to be able to remove those barriers and allow them to react and go 100 miles an hour. And that's weight room, that's in the weight room and on the field. But again, like I had talked about at the start of this, weight room success for the field. Okay, my job doesn't matter. Then we have another philosophy that we use. So move the bar like it's 500 and 500 like it's the bar. We talk about moving the dirt. Okay, John Welborn, he was a 10-year NFL vet for the Chiefs for a long time. He talked about moving the dirt. Okay, and this is something that we've implemented. We break on it every day. It's something that's built into the culture. So moving the dirt. Some days when we move the dirt, you're going to have a spoon. Some days you're going to have a backhoe. Okay, as long as we're moving the dirt together in the same direction, we're getting the work done. So whatever you're given on that day, move the crap out of that dirt. Keep going. Okay, that's how we look at the bottom and top line, the spectrum of what we're doing. Then, motivating the elephant, getting to the emotional side. And this is what I was talking about. I hope you guys can implement something out of this, is motivating the elephant, getting to the emotion of the athlete. Okay? As coaches, especially strength coaches, we're not supposed to be soft. We're supposed to be the guys that are there at 4 in the morning, blasting music, just finish the workout before the guys come in. Okay? That's the culture behind it. That doesn't mean you can't care for your athletes. And honestly, none of you guys would be here if you didn't care for your athletes. Let's be honest, okay? You're doing this not for yourself, you're doing it for your athletes. So we do something called why meetings. Why meetings are, it's very basic. It takes 5 minutes per athlete, but it allows them to bring their walls down. You get to know them better and them establish trust in you, okay? So very simple 3 questions. If you weren't a football player, basketball player, student, okay? If you weren't a football player, what would you be doing and why? And I also tack on to that, there's no restrictions. It's your dream. What would you be doing? Because our human psychology gets caught up in what our situation is now, okay? Well, I ran like a 5 flat 40, so I'm not going anywhere, okay? What is your dream? What would you be doing now if there's nothing involved, okay? Kind of not a superficial question, but I mean, I get all over the board. I've done this with hundreds of athletes. Travel, be with family, business, military, whatever. And then the second question is the hardest question to answer, and this is where you can see some emotion come out of the kids. And you also see that they see that you care, you're asking about something. Because when I'm in the weight room, in a normal year, non-COVID year, when we have 85 guys in our weight room, I'm not going to be like, what's the hardest thing you've gone through? Okay? I'm going to be like, what the hell are you doing? Get going. We need to move. Okay? So sit them down, have a one-on-one, and ask them, what is the most difficult thing you've gone through in your life? What is that? Okay? This is where I have to tie to the emotions with them, and this is where the wall comes down. Okay? And I've seen it. Some of the baddest dudes on our team telling me about the hardest thing they've gone through in their life. Okay? And I mean, this is all the way from death of a parent, transferring to DSU, friends, divorce, sickness, everything. Okay? And this is where you get those personal stories. Why was that why was that the hardest thing you've gone through? And they will open up to you. If they trust you, they will open up to you, and that opens many lines of communication down the road, okay? You now show that you care. And then lastly, capping it off, who is the most influential person in your life? This gets interesting. Sometimes you have teammates be the most influential, which is awesome. That's what you want in a room right there, okay? But a lot of times, parents, grandparents, brothers, sisters, friends, whatever it is. But after that, you get all 85 of them. I was on a trip to, I think, Bismarck, North Dakota a while back, and I had a bunch of time to kill. I pulled out my why meetings. I got the phone numbers of the most influential persons in every kid's life, and I called them. And I said, just to let you know, Joe Blow said you're the most influential person in his life. Just letting you know that. You've had a great impact. We love having the kids here. This is what's important, okay? And that's why I talk about, yes, our programming needs to be on point where programming needs to be there. You can't just do something. But this is what makes it. This is what makes it. Because if I don't do this, if I don't show that I care, why are they going to do my stupid program or anybody else's? Okay? Show them you care, get to that emotional side of the elephant. And then lastly, guys, creating bonding experiences. So, I mean, this could be through shared suffering, we called it, okay, or the Katana program that we do. So our red shirt program is called the Katana program. Anybody know what a katana is? Sword, okay, but it's a very special sword, and it's out of a raw material, just raw metal, and it's folded continuously, and then it's into a very effective weapon. Okay, that's what we want out of our red shirts. So we create bonding moments through shared suffering, group activities, things where you can just have them outside of the weight room, outside of the football field. Okay, so we have those. I made a strength council. This may be something you could do. I made a strength council in winter conditioning. These are the guys that, these aren't the starters. They could be. These aren't the starters. These are the kids that just come in, do the work, go, hold their teammates responsible, and do everything that you ask them to. So we made a strength council. We met once a month at my gym, shot the crap, donuts, coffee, just hanging out, getting to know the kids on that one-to-one level, okay? So same thing here, create one-on-ones, guys. Going to, as a strength and conditioning coach at an NAI school, you're attached to the school, all this, but going to out-of-town games, going to events, church events, going to their academic events. Hey, you're presenting your portfolio for the teacher program, I'll be there, okay? Creating the one-on-ones for them, you don't even have to talk to them. As long as they can see your face, they know you care, okay? Supporting the academics that they're going through. And then establishing responsibility. I talked about this a little bit earlier, but implementing your program, don't forget the program part, implementing that, but establishing responsibility within groups, within the group of as a whole, and then the whole football team and the whole university, okay? So when somebody isn't doing what's right, they're not doing the tempos right, call them out, okay? When somebody is doing something in class, it goes outside the weight room, okay? Building routine for them, holding their teammates accountable outside of the weight room, outside of the field. And so very basically, guys, how I look at it is success is a twofold process. It could, I mean, however you want to break it down, it could be a fivefold process, okay? How I look at it very basically, it is a twofold process. Our programming works because of our culture, okay? And our culture works because of our program. No, that doesn't make sense. But make sure that you can relate every single thing that you do back to the why. We want to win games. Here you go. Here's that, okay? Once we can establish that, things go a lot better in your favor. And like I said, I've been implanted into a very successful, very culturally great school, okay? We've had success, and we've been able to continue that success through all of our coaching staff, okay? So make sure you look at this from a twofold process, guys, and if you guys have any questions, please let me know. There's some contact stuff, too. Appreciate it.